Alrighty. We're almost there. We're almost to Super Bowl week. So, like, I personally get way more excited about the Super Bowl than probably most people do. So we'll talk some other stuff. We've got some other good topics here. We're going to talk a little Eli, but hopefully not as boring and mundane a debate as everyone's having on Twitter. We're going to do a little free agent discussion because the quarterbacks, the stuff's starting to heat up a little bit. You got Robert Kraft talking in the middle of the street. You got Phillip Rivers driving to Winnebago.
Speaking of heating up a little bit, wow.
We're going to do a little draft talk, too, because there are some props out there, and they mentioned that the draft is going to be located in the middle of a pond, which should be interesting. And then we're going to get to the Super Bowl. We rewatched the San Francisco-Kansas City matchup from Week 3, have some takeaways from that, and we're going to talk some props. But first, there are a couple of things that I've got to mention. If you're watching this, you can see a little knee. You're showing a little knee.
I'm showing a little knee, yeah.
You're going to New Orleans this weekend.
I'm excited.
What's your favorite New Orleans food?
Well, this sounds bad, but the beignet.
No, it's not bad.
Because you can't get the beignet anywhere else. You can approximate everything else in New Orleans. Okay, not great. Like everything in New Orleans is good. But the beignet you cannot replicate. So
there's a chance that New Orleans is like the most gluttonous food city.
A chance? I think it's like fairly like.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's not that close. I mean, I would think like there's Texas barbecue is pretty gluttonous.
Kansas City barbecue was good the other day. Sherman listens to the show. Thank you for the Joe's barbecue.
Oh yeah, Joe's.
So
Joe's is very good.
Seren is such a boss that he ordered Joe's the night before because they're not open on Sunday, and then had it delivered. Like
smart,
good man,
really smart. What'd you have?
Ribs.
Jesus. Now I'm in it. Now we're gonna have to hurry this up. Ayers, can you order us some barbecue? Also, so I noticed your knees, but here's the other thing that I got a text right before going on air. So my girlfriend will listen to the show just to be nice. I don't think she doesn't have a doesn't.
My mom and dad will say you sounded good. It's like
I don't even get that.
Yeah.
But it's like a pity download, like I support your line of work. But the other day she's like, you roll your sleeves up, and I've noticed, and it's not a good look. And so I've sans rolled sleeves today. I got called out. I don't get any comments on how do you sound, anything like that, but the rolled sleeves I got called out for.
You hate to see it. I mean,
I
kind of like the rolled sleeves look because it's versatile. You know what I mean?
I roll them up. Jesus, this table. So we're in a sauna. It's like 95 degrees.
Yeah, it is.
Ayers is wearing a jacket, which is insane. I'm sweating.
We're just preparing ourselves for Miami. Look,
and this table is so tilted that I thought it was falling off the stage. All right, we're off to a good start.
We are off to a great start.
But at least my sleeves aren't rolled, and you're wearing shorts. You're prepared for the sauna. Okay, Eli Manning. He retires. Can I just say, I don't care about the Hall of Fame discussion. Do you?
Well, no, but I do care about the fact that, and this was, I was on a couple podcasts the last 2 days talking about, the state of football analytics, right? Where are we? Is it time to take a victory? All that kind of stuff. And I will contend that Eli Manning's candidacy for the Hall of Fame is meaningless, right? Who cares if he makes the Hall of Fame? Honestly, he seems like a great guy. I don't really care. But for me, it's one of those where it really highlights where we are in terms of the conversation about football, right? And we've gotten a long way, right? We're pretty good at detecting what's good and what's bad. But then people come out of the woodwork at a time like now, hey, he's 7th all time in passing yards. He has 2 Super Bowl rings. He's, his numbers look great. His numbers are way better than Joe Namath. How did Joe Namath make the Hall of Fame?
That's the worst.
He's got way more. He's got more career touchdown passes than Joe Montana and all this kind of stuff. And it's to me, that's the frustrating thing. It's not it's not whether or not he should make the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is more of an entertainment thing. He clearly, if you're the Giants, you clearly run it back and have him be your franchise quarterback again because you won 2 Super Bowls. But it just again shows how far we have to come in terms of being able to evaluate players.
I do think that the peak versus overall average conversation is very interesting because I think it applies to like a lot of different things in life. And so here's basically the way to kind of sum it up. So we started grading players in 2006, and he had this 4-year stretch from 2009 to 2012 where he was a top 10 graded quarterback. But every other year, aside from that, he's been a bottom half guy. I think he was 14 in 2006, but every other year basically in the 20s. And the past few years, it's been 24th, 27th, 22nd, 31st in 2018. Obviously didn't really play enough in 2019. And that's PFF grade rank. So he certainly hasn't been anywhere near the kind of Tom Brady, I win Super Bowls, but I'm also playing well enough, to legitimize my GOAT status, obviously. And then he has the Super Bowl runs, which aren't just Super Bowl rings. Like, he legitimately played
for sure.
really freaking well in those Super Bowls. They are not winning those Super Bowls without the way he played. He's won. Warren Sharp had this stat about how many games he's won as an underdog in the playoffs, which I thought, like, you can't be – you're an idiot if you just say, you know what, that doesn't matter because he played so poorly for the majority of his career.
Yeah. Right, and that's the thing, and that's like you see Kurt Warner made the Hall of Fame based upon a far shorter time period of being brilliant. The hard part is like how much do you discount him for basically being the reason that the Giants were a bad team for an entire decade? You know what I mean? Like that's the second part of the whole equation.
But is that his fault?
I would say if we're going to be the people who say quarterback is the most important part of a football team, and the Giants. So the Giants made the playoffs twice in the last decade. Yeah. In 2011, they won the Super Bowl. They had a negative point differential during that regular season, and then in 2016, they basically were plus 20 points or something like that. So, like, this is not. He wasn't like
my point. He didn't
carry a historic franchise.
My point would be that it was kind of an organizational failure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I don't think he was a good enough player for them to put. For them to continue putting him back there would be my point. Like for the last 4 years of his career, he's 24th, ranks 24th, 27th, 22nd, 31st, grades in the 60s, mid 60s. Like I'm cutting bait on that guy.
Yeah,
immediately.
But isn't that part of the point though? The part of the point being that like the Hall of Fame is probably reserved for players who are able to elevate themselves above all those things.
Sure.
And
well, it's weird.
Not for players you have to make excuses about continuously.
In baseball, people freak out about the Hall of Fame, right? Derek Jeter's like one vote shy of unanimous vote, and people are losing their minds.
Freaking out.
Just weird. In the NBA, like everyone gets in.
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah.
Basically, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. No one really cares that much in the NBA. And then in the NFL, in part because it's a small sample size thing, the debates, I think, are even more vigorous because in baseball, there's such a large sample size. It's kind of like, well, he cleared this cutoff, he cleared this cutoff, he has this many strikeouts.
Right.
And in the NFL, it's like we can have these kind of very nuanced conversations where you're talking about, well, he played 16 games a year for 10 years, and 10 of them were so great that he won 2 Super Bowls for a franchise.
Yeah.
And I had an epiphany in the shower this morning.
Oh, no.
I think to a lot of people that I'm friends with, I'm kind of like an Eli Manning. And here's what I mean by that.
Oh no.
Here's what I mean by that. I'm pretty much out of their lives. I'm not good at as a mea culpa. I'm not good at keeping in touch with people that are living across the country or, that I don't work with. But when I do get in touch with them, right? If I go visit, if we go on a trip,
right? If
we go out,
full send.
I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm like a great friend to have because I go all out.
Yeah, you do that. That's a good. But you're not.
But it was horrible to have that realization.
Yeah, but there's a different thing though. It's like and that's not terrible, but you're not actively sabotaging the other person when you're gone.
That's true. So they're not relying on me to be their quarterback during the rest of their lives. So, that's good. That makes me feel better.
So you're not negatively impacting their lives. Whereas, and again, look, and I've said this before, like my personal stance is I don't think he should make the Hall of Fame, but I also think like my personal thing is if you're a Giants fan, that's fine. If he's in your Hall of Fame, I'm fine with that. But in my opinion, the Giants should, frankly, if Giants fans should feel fortunate that they won 2 Super Bowls that, in all honesty, they shouldn't have won. Yeah. Like, if you run the Eli Manning career back.
That's a great point.
If you run the Eli Manning career back, the median outcome is they win 0 Super Bowls, right? And so the fact that they won 2, like, don't get greedy here. Don't, like, then tell us that our quarterback should be considered in a Hall of Fame with guys like Montana, with guys like Steve Young, with guys like Len Dawson, and all these players that, like, Troy Aikman, all these players that were truly great. Like, no, take your 2 Super Bowls. You earned those. Probably shouldn't have. And have fun. Like, we're happy for you.
Two things to close this out. I think it's ridiculous. I have no problem with people arguing about it on Twitter, but the people that get, like, actually mad about it should go, jump in a very cold lake. We have one here if you're looking for one.
It's not the greatest, but
no, it actually looks like mud. But you should not be allowed to get mad about this. Because if you get mad about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, like, come on, man, get a life. Or woman, get a life. The second thing about that is I almost think it helps him if he doesn't make it, because he's able to have this career after football where he can play that up. And it's not like he didn't make it like Pete Rose didn't make it. He didn't make it because he kind of got gypped, and he can sort of – Giants fans should love him. And he can play up on that a little bit more.
Somebody in baseball, Bert Blyleven, was like that, where he...
Wait, what? Say that last name again.
Bert Blyleven.
Isn't it Blyleven?
I don't know. He was the color commentator when I was a Twins fan.
I know just enough about baseball to be dangerous.
So the thing about Bert was that his shtick on the air was that he hadn't made the Hall of Fame, and he was sort of deserving. You look at all the sabermetrics and everything. He basically was, but he was an All-Star twice. He, like, won a couple World Series, but, like, from traditional baseball parlance, he wasn't a Hall of Famer, right? And so his shtick for all the years was, like, I should be a Hall of Famer. And he finally got in, and now it's like Bert doesn't have his bit anymore. And it's like, I agree with you. I think Eli could, like, make a case. Like, it's sort of like, remember, like, Christine Michael is for Seattle fans. It's like, well, there'd be no more fun if he was actually good. The fun is in this idea that he got gypped the entire time. Yeah. And, like I think that's a good point.
There you go. Better that he doesn't go to the Hall of Fame than
he's Christine Michael of quarterbacks.
You heard it here first.
Eli did nothing wrong.
That won't get it. No one will be mad about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we move on to the next segment, I should mention we've got some cool stuff on PFF.com. I think the best thing about PFF is that not only can you in season learn about players and the game and everything probably as well as you can from any site, but the draft and free agency and all these pieces that are ancillary to the season that mean a ton, we have a really robust set of things for you to utilize. So the free agent tracker is up. It's new and improved, so you can actually, it's like a web app now.
Yeah.
Our buddy Scott Burwinkle, who's a magician on the keyboard, created a really awesome free agent tracker. You can go check it out. The link's on our Twitter. And you can look at team needs. And you can look at, if you have a subscription, you can get the WAR, wins above replacement, for the last 3 years for that player, which is new and improved. You get analysis by Sam, Steve, Solly wrote a few, Solomon Wilcots. So a bunch of really good stuff there. You should go check it out. I want to talk about quarterbacks.
Oh, man.
Since we last talked, Phillip Rivers has moved officially to Florida, which means the Chargers' job ostensibly is open. Tom Brady has been rumored to be getting a divorce with Gisele Bündchen.
Come on.
Yeah, you didn't see this?
No.
Yeah, it was like on some gossip magazine. Now, he's completely refuted it, and a little bit of investigation into his Instagram comments would tell you that they're in a good place. But I'm just saying, like, the rumor mill is happening.
Look,
Robert Kraft told TMZ they planned to re-sign him as he was getting into a car to go somewhere. And then you've got the Chicago Tribune wondering if Dak Prescott will back up Mitch Trubisky next year.
Come on.
Where have you been?
I did see.
The Chicago Tribune literally tweeted something that said Dak Prescott, and then named a couple of other free agent quarterbacks. Eli was one of them, I believe, and go potential backups for Mitch Trubisky next year.
I mean, Dak, we've had our ups and downs with Dak.
Come on.
But come on. That. Holy buckets. I mean, Mitch Trubisky, how many teams in the NFL would Mitch Trubisky actually start for? Let alone like he should barely start for the Bears, frankly.
I would say this. We just mentioned the Chargers. Chargers need a quarterback.
Yeah.
Who's their backup right now? Tyrod?
Tyrod would start in Chicago.
Tyrod would start over Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
And Bears fans will have a conniption about it, and I would say go enjoy having a conniption about it.
Yeah.
Because if you watched a game this year and suffered through that, you probably
Anytime a Bears fan wants to come at me about Trubisky, I always tell them to go cash their over 9.5 wins ticket. That's all I'll tell them.
That's a good one to cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if they come at you about Trubisky with the same accuracy of Trubisky, you don't need to worry about it.
I don't even have to duck. So that's okay. So realistically speaking, thinking about quarterback positions that are open, Tampa is possibly open, right? Los Angeles Chargers possibly open. Indianapolis Colts is possibly open. I think the Colts are such a smart franchise. They put Brissett in a position where he's either going to be a really well-paid backup or a moderately paid starter. So that position is open. You can make a case that Jacksonville, is a possibility. Obviously, Dallas if they don't go back to Dak.
I'm gonna go pull up the free agent tracker right now. I mean, there's
New Orleans,
the Drew Brees. So I kind of think about it in a couple of tiers. There's the guys who I really don't think are going anywhere. The guys who I really don't think are going anywhere are Drew Brees and Dak Prescott. The reason is that Dallas can't really afford at this stage to have that position be unclear. Mm-hmm. And unless they are signing Tom Brady, which I thought would have been like a package deal sort of thing, I don't think that's happening. So Dak to me is staying in Dallas. Drew Brees is staying in New Orleans. And then there's kind of
the Tennessee, right, with Tannehill.
With Tannehill, you'd assume they franchised him. But then there's like a couple, like Tom Brady, I really think is going back to New England because I can't see a city that allows him to grow his brand like Boston does. And I think Kraft loves him enough that he'll keep him there. But there's still a little question mark. And then there's this like total, I have no idea, right? There's Phillip Rivers, there's Teddy Bridgewater, there's Jameis Winston, there's Marcus Mariota even. And I'm very curious, like, do you think Phillip Rivers just retires?
I think he'd be smart to. I mean, in all honesty, like the problem, like Rivers to me has a better Hall of Fame case than Manning.
I agree.
But we're getting to the point where if he does not, like, if he hangs on a little too long, he could be in a position where he's like a lot like Eli to many people, where he loses more and more of a claim to the Hall of Fame status if he plays poorly. Now, last season he wasn't terrible, like he wasn't great, but he wasn't like a below replacement level quarterback, but he wasn't like amazing, right? And so, like, I do think retiring is a good opportunity for him, because what's the side? Why, if you're Phillip Rivers, what's the motivation to continue playing? You want to win a Super Bowl. You're not winning a Super Bowl probably in LA because the Kansas City Chiefs are the class of that division, and they will be. Well,
also because you can't really drive a RV from Florida to Los Angeles.
Right. You're not winning a Super. You could. I mean, Tampa Bay is an interesting team because Arians is a good coach. The wide receivers are terrific. The defense is better. But again, and the Saints could be on the downswing. Like, there's always that possibility.
But the NFC is stacked.
And you have to go through that. And, like, again, what is Rivers here for anymore? Like, his best opportunity was with the 2018 Chargers. He runs it back in 2019. It just didn't work out because the Chargers are the Chargers. I do think retiring is his best option. Or Tennessee might be Tennessee being a team where, like, I think maybe, like, after a couple glasses of wine, you can convince yourself that team is not that far away.
I mean, here's the thing about Phillip Rivers. If he moved his family to Florida, he ain't moving them somewhere else. So you have to decide whether you think he's actually willing to play in a place that is many states over.
Yeah.
And I would argue that if you're going to choose one of those states and you just don't care, well then, hell, go to Indianapolis because they've probably got a better infrastructure. This is what's kind of crazy to me, though. Past 2 seasons, Tom Brady, number 12th ranked quarterback by PFF grade, was the 14th most valuable quarterback. Phillip Rivers was the 16th most valuable quarterback. 2 years ago, Tom Brady, 5th most valuable quarterback. Phillip Rivers, 6th most valuable quarterback. So it's not as if you're getting, if you can talk yourself into Tom Brady being still a Super Bowl caliber winning quarterback, which I believe he is, that Patriots offense was an absolute disaster, then Phillip Rivers should be there too.
Yep.
And I don't so you brought up Tampa Bay. This was the one I was going to bring up. I don't understand why Tampa Bay wouldn't go after him. Because as much as you love Jameis Winston, and I think you love him because he hit the season yards prop that you bet.
Of course.
I don't see it.
Well,
I don't see it. And Phillip,
you can't. The negatively graded throws are too high for Jameis. The thing with Jameis is the hard part with Jameis is, and why I want him to go back to Tampa Bay, is because Tampa Bay is the best place for him, right? But Jameis is not the best player for Tampa Bay, so it's really a one-way street there.
So here's what I would look at. You can go check this out on the free agency tracker, by the way. I'm finding this to be very useful. I didn't think it was going to be as useful as it was.
Yeah,
very useful. Can you win? So I just talked about Phillip Rivers. He was the number 7 ranked quarterback 2 years ago, number 17 last year using PFF grade. Can you win a Super Bowl with a guy that's a top 10 quarterback?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been a top 10 quarterback 2 of the past 3 years. Jameis Winston has been in the 20s 2 of the past 3 years and number 16 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you win a Super Bowl with that type of PFF grade?
You have to get very lucky.
Yeah. You basically have to have a Nick Foles playoffs after squeaking into the playoffs.
Okay, so let's swing this all the way around then, because we go to Dak now.
Yep.
Dak is now the number 3 quarterback in terms of WAR after incorporating playoffs. 10th in PFF grade. His prior 2 seasons were 20th and 19th in grade, 18th and 14th in WAR. Can you win with Dak? Because that's the thing. The thing with Dak is he's had 2 good seasons and 2 mediocre seasons, and we talked about how going into the season they shouldn't buy into Dak, and now the sort of consensus is they should, and having a new head coach and all that kind of stuff. But is Dallas a place for one of these older quarterbacks to have a possibility to go in and have some success with Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy with an offense? Do you not mortgage your future on the quarterback position and mortgage it, let's say, on Byron Jones and Amari Cooper, and then have kind of a medium level quarterback deal for somebody like Phillip Rivers or Tom Brady? Is that opened up?
I legitimately thought that the Cowboys should think about Tom Brady, that they should just sign everyone else and take Tom Brady for a couple of years. Doesn't seem like McCarthy is going to
What's the downside? I mean, the downside is you sign Dak to a $40 million per year contract.
But that's the downside, right?
And
I don't think he's Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
But there's Joe Flacco potential there, right? You pay this
without the ring.
You pay this guy that much money, and you're just never able. You have to get rid of so many other pieces that he's not able to elevate your team above that level. And I think here's the kicker for Dak Prescott. I believe that the Cowboys should have handled this far differently. That Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones should have gone in last year and said, look, we want to win a Super Bowl. You know who's won the most Super Bowls over the past 20 years? The Patriots.
Yeah.
Can we work on we want you to be a Cowboy for life, like Tom Brady has been a Patriot for life. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
But that needs to start here and now. We're going to work out a contract that allows us to keep your nucleus around. Don't worry, you'll get taken care of. But that'll allow you to win Super Bowls. Because honestly, if he doesn't win a Super Bowl with the Cowboys or make a couple of deep runs, he's going to be a nobody real soon.
And they went about this the entire wrong way from our perspective. When you look at the order in which they kept all these players, right? So you look at Demarcus Lawrence as an edge player, he's certainly good, but we don't view edges as valuable as corners. They went with him instead of Byron Jones. The linebacker Jaylon Smith had one good season. They buy into him. Those 2 players, if you were to cut them, would be a combined $24.4 million in terms of dead money this year. So they're not going anywhere. You can't absolve that. And then Ezekiel Elliott as well. He's almost $15 million next year of dead money if you were to let him go. the hard part about McCarthy and why he's got a lot of work in front of him is the fact that Dallas went about the order of constructing this roster backwards, and there's not really a way to go in and undo it, right? When we saw Doug Peterson, when he took over the Eagles, what did he do immediately? He traded Kiko Alonso, right, to the Dolphins along with Byron Maxwell. Like, he literally said, okay, there's some of these things that Chip Kelly did that I'm going to undo immediately. And that's not the case. That can't be the case with Dallas. So
Dallas had 5 players that were question marks. They went and signed the 2 by far least valuable first. They now have the 2 most valuable in Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott, and then Byron Jones, who's, third there on that list. And that could get real ugly really quickly. I mean, we could be looking back at this and being like, holy cow. Imagine if all 3 of those players went to other teams. I mean, they're going to be, I think it could all be very, very good players, and the Cowboys could be sitting there with fat Zeke and Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
Could be really ugly for them.
Yeah. So interestingly, so let's just talk about this briefly. Are we bullish on Dallas next year, or there's so much more to be determined, right? Because I'm
very skeptical.
I would say if their win total is 9.5.
Well, you don't know what their team construction is right now.
But let's say they re-sign Dak to a $30 to $35 million deal, and they're able to keep either Byron Jones or Amari Cooper. I'm bullish on them, even with Philly probably being healthy, and the 2 teams there's nowhere to go but up for the Giants and Redskins. I'm still bullish on them. Anything short of that, I'm kind of a wait and see on Dallas.
I'd be very nervous if they got rid of Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think you can roll out Michael Gallup, Blake Jarwin, and be super excited about that. As good as I think Dak played this year, and as smart as I believe Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy combo to be, that you're just going to lose there. Real quick, 20 seconds. Teddy Bridgewater ends up where?
That's a great question.
I got a place for you.
Okay, go for it.
Welcome to Los Angeles, Teddy Bridgewater.
So, okay. Do you think it's in a competition with Tyrod Taylor,
Yes.
or do you think it's okay? Because in my opinion, there's probably and I'm a big Teddy Bridgewater fan. When you say that, I'm hesitant about does he even get a chance to start in the NFL right now? Or should he take another season as the apprentice to Breeze in New Orleans?
Let me tell you what. If it's the Chargers, I think he should stay in New Orleans.
I agree. And we've already seen that he's a smart guy, because he had the opportunity to start in Miami last year and decided to stay in New Orleans. I feel like he's the kind of quarterback that Sean Payton. I think it's a smooth transition between Breeze and him.
Yep.
He's obviously not nearly as good, but it's a smooth transition.
Dream scenario for next year. Teddy stays in New Orleans. Phil Rivers goes to Tampa Bay, and Jameis goes to Los Angeles and throws to Keenan Allen
and those are some down the field players. Those are some big ADOT players. Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, cool.
You're welcome. All right. Another thing that is out on PFF right now is the draft guide. If you're into the Senior Bowl, check it out. We're not going to talk about the Senior Bowl because, heaven forbid, we spend more time talking about guys running one-on-ones. But it's fun to watch, and Mike and Austin have you guys covered, so you should check it out. Draft guide is live. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, Mike did a good job with that.
But let's talk about the draft real briefly, because there's a prop out there. Nothing gets you more excited than a little prop action.
Yep.
Talk to me about this one. So they're doing you love the Bellagio Fountain. It's a beautiful place.
It's a great place.
Where dreams are made. And they're going to have the draft in the middle of the Bellagio pond. And apparently the players are going to be motorboated out there. You motorboating son of a bitch.
The old sailor you.
And there's no way that goes wrong. That'll be great. What's the prop here?
BetOnline.ag has the prop. Any first-round pick jump in the Bellagio pond at the draft. The no is -500. The yes is +300.
I think that the yes, I would bet the yes immediately.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that someone jumps in the Bellagio pond, especially because I think the weather will have people forget that Las Vegas gets very cold in the winter. but it will be warm enough, I believe, by then that
yes.
you can jump in the pond. And I would not be surprised. It wouldn't surprise me if your boy Joe Burrow's kind of a brash young man. Smoked a cigar in the locker room. Bad boy. Coming to Cincinnati, we need a little attitude.
I would lay the price with the no.
Okay, I think yes.
Because I don't think, for one, like, I don't think that all 32 people will actually be in Vegas for it. Like, I think some people go all Joe Thomas and like go fishing and all that crap. And I think that like the Raj dog is going to be fairly he's going to send a message.
Maybe, but maybe he wants someone to jump in.
That's true. Maybe.
The bigger question here is who gets taken up on the boat number 2. And I don't know why people aren't talking about this more. I think we should talk about it every freaking podcast until people start listening, which is if Tua Tagovailoa is healthy, the fact that the Redskins are not thinking of drafting him is absolutely ludicrous to me. And I'll just bring it up again. Like, Khalil Mack has been a really, really good player. At his peak, he's been worth about 0.6 of a win above replacement. He's played really, really freaking well for Raiders teams and Bears teams that have been massively underwhelming. Aaron Donald, same thing. J.J. Watt, same thing. J.J. Watt is, if Chase Young is J.J. Watt, like, you'd be ecstatic, right? That's his ceiling. What did Houston do with crappy quarterbacks? Absolutely nothing. So the fact that Washington isn't thinking of drafting Tua, to me, is absolutely ludicrous. The teams that then could trade up, though, if Washington doesn't want to draft him, the Chargers, the Panthers, you've got the Dolphins. Where would you want him to go?
Here's a question that I'm going to ask given where we currently are, because and granted, not everything has worked out for the Cleveland Browns, but the Cleveland Browns did take a few years before they finally acquired their franchise quarterback, because the obvious choice is the Dolphins. But the question is are the Dolphins ready to incorporate a quarterback? Because they were, if you add up the wins above replacement, they were the worst team in the NFL this year by a country mile. They have a great coach, and I think he got a lot more out of that team than he possibly could have. They have the ammunition, but that ammunition needs to acquire players, right? And so the calculus that has to be done is, okay, is Tua Tagovailoa better than any quarterback you can take next year, right? Plus the sort of like, the players that you'd have to trade up. It's a really interesting question. I always lean towards taking the quarterback, because if the quarterback is good, all the other sins are covered up generally. But to me, it's the Dolphins. I think Detroit could make a play because Stafford is still good, and Stafford could generate some value in a trade at some point in time, and obviously Washington too. But to me, it's Miami. Miami is the most interesting one here.
I do agree with you. To me, though, the Panthers are also very interesting because they're building an infrastructure that is there for the long haul. And so if you're taking Tua, you need to be there for the long haul because you should probably be cautious with him. It may be the case that you want to sit him out for a good portion of that. That first year.
Is Cam Newton the type of, like, so the interesting thing is there are quarterbacks that I think can be the bridge. Like
Cam Newton ain't that guy.
Yeah, the Cam Newton's not going to stick around and be the mentor to, like, that's a negative connotation, but it's more like Cam Newton's probably too good. Like, Andy Dalton's a guy who I think will stay around when Burrow's there, probably because he doesn't have a lot of other good options, but he's also like, whereas Cam Newton, I think the implication is he has more options. And so if somebody's coming in to take his spot, he's just going to leave.
Cam Newton or Jameis Winston, one of the two is going to Los Angeles. I think if Carolina makes a play at Tua at number 2, then there's a chance. There
are so many quarterbacks in the open market, though, that the Bears went from not having any ammunition to get Newton to maybe having enough, given that I think Newton's, just by the sheer supply of quarterbacks that are available, I don't think Newton's going to garner as much in a trade.
Here's a question. Could the Chicago Bears trade Khalil Mack to the Detroit Lions to draft Tua? Like, as a part of a package? That would just be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm just trying to rile up the Bears fans.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be better for their franchise. All right, we're going to talk Super Bowl. Before we do, I just talked about how I don't roll up the sleeves of my shirts anymore. But the biggest issue that I have with shirts is finding a actual nice shirt to wear that fits me. Proper Cloth has come to the rescue because they make dress shirts that actually fit. They ask you 10 really easy questions, uses a machine learning algorithm that then custom creates your size, so you don't have to worry about fitting in to some other random mannequin size. It's a totally custom fit shirt. Propercloth.com. Easily create it. Takes 30 seconds if you're not a complete computer moron. Maybe 2 minutes if you are. You can customize literally everything. You want a bigger pocket, bigger left cuff for your watch, 30 different style options. You can totally make it your own. Plus, it's real quality. The best fabrics from around the world. They only use the best stuff. I love them. If it weren't a sauna in here, I'd probably wear them every day, but I have the, nice long sleeve ones, and those can get, I bought them for winter. It ain't winter in here. It's a tropical disaster. Anyways, Proper Cloth, far from a disaster. Proper Cloth is absolutely awesome. I couldn't recommend it more, honestly. I'm never buying a dress shirt from anywhere else. They are featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Esquire, GQ, Fast Company. GQ said they are their new favorite online custom shirt maker. Go to propercloth.com, use promo code PFF20. So you go propercloth.com/PFF and then use promo code 20 to get $20 off your first shirt. Taking any to New Orleans?
No.
It's going to be warm there.
Yeah.
All right. We watched week 3 of 2018, which I think you wanted to do just to take a dagger, stick it in me, and twist it a little bit, because that was the game that Jimmy G ended up torching his ACL. But I thought it was interesting. Rewatching that game, I realized it was an inflection point for the 49ers. It was a very good microcosm of what their season was last year, but it also set the table for them to have some draft capital to kind of reset and retool for this year, which obviously has been a big success. Nick Bosa was great, and Jimmy G was able to come back and not be, and continue to play well after he got over a couple of jitters. Rewatching that game, in case you haven't rewatched that game, so it's week 3. Mahomes has just started off on this incredible tear. Right, he just roasted the Steelers the week before as an underdog in Pittsburgh. And this game, I mean, they just get off to really one of the more impressive starts. They scored touchdowns on their first 5 drives.
Yep.
I mean, they are absolutely unstoppable. Some of the notes I have is, holy fucking shit, Mahomes is good. They go up 21-7. That's when he scrambles around.
Yeah. The play that
you should go look up that play. It's ridiculous. The next drive, they score again. It's 28-7. And so from the Chiefs' perspective, this was Mahomes, and this was his year. They were just absolutely unstoppable, and they got off to this really fast start. The Niners, on the other hand, their very first play is a Kittle drop. The next play is a failed end around, and then they have a terrible punt.
Yeah.
And it summed up their season.
Yeah, when the Chiefs started the season, I believe the first 5 or 6 games of 2018, they were terrible defensively. But every single game, their defense, they deferred, and they would force 3 and out, and they would get ahead. That was literally their, and it happened in this game. And it happened in many ways, not because the Chiefs' defense was any good, but because the other team's offense self-destructed. Yep. One of the things that was interesting about this game to me was how good Kareem Hunt was, right? And how explosive of a runner he was. But I kept thinking to myself, how much different would this game be if Damian Williams was playing? And I kept coming back to the fact of, no, Mahomes steals every deal, right? Mahomes is the one that was making all the plays. So we'll talk about the similarities and differences between the teams now and then in a second. But it was interesting because Kareem, what was the talk last year in week 10 or whatever when Kareem Hunt got kicked off the team? It was like, oh,
what will they do?
Chiefs will never be the same. And I remember I got drilled, on the radio, I said, he's worth maybe a quarter of a win at best. And people are like, you're ridiculous. This is, and we saw, I mean, the 2 running backs in next Sunday's game are 2 undrafted guys. So it was fun to see Kareem Hunt play. Obviously, fun to see a running back that explosive and that talented. But ultimately, like, his effect on the Chiefs' offense was basically nil.
So the Chiefs get out to this huge lead, and it's interesting because I could see this is what the Chiefs want to do in this game, in the Super Bowl. They want to get out to a lead and make Jimmy Garoppolo play from behind. And I was very interested to watch the Niners play from this huge deficit. And to their credit, in the second half, like, Jimmy G went from an ADOT of like 11 to 6. In other words, he was throwing about half as far downfield, but was far more efficient. They moved the ball, and they were actually able to get back into the game. In the first half, Mahomes was brilliant, but they had this was the most penalties that the Niners have had in the past two seasons. It was the most missed tackles they have had in the past two seasons. Now, are those things a manifestation of the fact that the Chiefs are a great offense? Certainly. But it's also indicative of the fact that they got off to a really rotten start. And I was impressed with the way that the Niners battled back and made this a game, and they actually had a chance to cut it to one score. But then Garoppolo took a sack on like a 1st and goal from the 10, and that basically can't. And then he tears his ACL, I think, on the next play.
Should have just ran out of bounds. I mean, that was like.
Well, he like sort of was. I think one of the reasons he tore is because I think he was indecisive. But they actually came back and had a chance, and in the second half, Garoppolo was fantastic. Had a 141 pass rating from a clean pocket. The pass protection was not great in that game for Jimmy G and the 49ers. Whereas on the other side of things, and this is something that isn't getting enough play right now, is that Mahomes' offensive line has been sensational, and it was in this game too. I mean, he just had the freedom that he had in the pocket to move around, and obviously his pocket awareness was great, but he was just so dynamic from both inside and outside the pocket. It really was a like.
Mitchell Schwartz's grade in the game was unbelievable. He gave up just one hurry, and that's again despite the fact that the Niners had, even now they're up front. They're so much better with D Ford and Joey Bosa, but back then they still had Armstead, they had Buckner, and the Chiefs' offensive line did terrifically. Mahomes still, much like the other day, he was responsible for 4 pressures on his own. Right, he's still the same QB in that regard. They're a little bit better offensively now that, instead of having Chris Conley, they go with Demarcus Robinson, what's his name? McCole Hardman. I think that they have a little bit more explosiveness on the outside. It's really interesting to look at the contrasting things here because you saw some things with the Niners offense in this game that are like now. The Chiefs, linebackers had such a difficult time covering tight ends and running backs. We saw Juszczyk have that wheel route touchdown over Anthony Hitchens. And that's something that Bob Sutton refused to address all season. And then early on in the season this year, Spagnuolo had a tough time with. And now the Chiefs do a pretty good job on running backs because they cover them with safeties and corners. And so it'll be interesting to see, you saw a lot of the Shanahanian offensive tactics here, and they did work. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers scored a bunch of points, especially in the second half, but just was not enough because of the Chiefs, torrid start.
I'm glad you brought that up because I have a couple big takeaways on both offenses. I can't wait for Shanahan Reed. This is like I'm not gonna have pants on by the second drive of the game in the Super Bowl. There were 2 things that I expect to see again. So from the offensive standpoint for the 49ers, they did the Juszczyk pitch. Do you remember that play?
Yep.
So after watching this game, I'm going to go watch the Saints game from this year where the Niners got down and see how they played that game.
Yeah.
Guess what play they ran in that game?
The pitch.
Juszczyk pitch. I expect to see that play. I expect to see Juszczyk utilized in a lot of interesting ways in the run game and in the pass game. They also took those deep shots that I think they're better prepared to execute this year because overall it was glaringly obvious to me that Pierre Garçon probably didn't have a lot left. That Marquise Goodwin is fast, but he's not as good of a route runner, anywhere near as good of a route runner as Sanders, and nowhere near as great of a after the catch can do everything as Deebo Samuel is now. So to me, the Niners are better prepared to implement those types of plays, the handoffs to Kittle, the trick plays with Juszczyk, the deep shots down the field, which they took in New Orleans. So that's one takeaway from the Niners offense. on the other side, there was something that maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because you watch more Chiefs than I do, but there was something in this game that I expect to see happen in the Super Bowl, and that's Tyreek Hill in the backfield. Tyreek Hill was in the backfield on a couple of plays in this game. It was something that I don't think they've done that much this year because of the injury. But now that they made the Super Bowl, I'm expecting both of these guys to just, I mean, the kitchen sink for these guys, especially Andy Reid. Yeah. The kitchen sink is most people's kitchen.
Yeah, I think another reason is that Hardman is a player that can do a lot of the things Hill does. But yes,
has he been in the backfield
a lot? Yeah, I mean he runs that like orbit motion thing,
the ghost motion.
Yeah.
But I'm talking like actually lining
like have him run the football.
Because both teams actually. This is another takeaway that I had. I didn't think the Washington game would be that great. You pitched it. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
It was
because if you're a Niners fan, you look at how far they've come. Right, Shanahan had 2 seasons of losing football to get to where he is now, and you look and you're saying, okay, like were those just lost seasons? And you watch this game, you're like, no, this was a way to sort of weed out some of the nonsense, right? Like Matt Breida averaged 9 yards carry in this game,
but
who was the starting running back for the Niners? It's Alfred Morris.
Yeah.
Like they figured out that they can't have sled dogs like Carlos Hyde and Alfred Morris on the team. They have to. If you get a buster like Raheem Morris, but what is he? He's a fast running back, right? Like even if he doesn't have a pedigree at all, he's at least got the. And again, you talked about Marquise Goodwin. Like Goodwin's a good football player. Trent Taylor's a good slot receiver, but they just don't fit into that scheme.
They're not Sanders.
So those 2 years that the Niners had to sort of lose football games and figure it out were worth it because now they're here, right? So when you watch a game like that, it's oftentimes like I watched the Niners Chiefs game from 14, 4 or 5 years ago, because it showed like the Chiefs wide receivers are Dwayne Bowe and Junior Hemingway.
We only have so much time.
And all the things that the Chiefs had to go through to get to where they are now, and you appreciate how brilliant they are now.
Yeah.
If you're a Niners fan, I think you have some of that there in this game because of all the iterations in the team.
It was an inflection point for Niners history, I really, truly believe. And it was interesting. I think both offenses, you brought up Mecole Hardman, who has been fantastic in limited
finally
outsnapped
Demarcus Robinson. I think their third receiver now for sure.
Both these offenses are better than they were in this game.
Yep.
And that's crazy to say because Mahomes was like breaking every record in the book.
Yep.
Both offenses are better than they were in this game, and this ended up being a super high-scoring game.
Yep.
So I will point that out and say that the over has just been skyrocketing upwards. I bet it on Sunday night. Last Sunday night, I think it was at 52 is what I got it at. It's now 54. It's probably only going up because I can't see people convincing themselves that this game ends up being an under game. Here is one thing that I found really interesting on the Niners side was their coverage was just abysmal in this game. And we have talked a lot about the importance of coverage versus pass rush. And the Niners narrative is that, they've all of a sudden become a much better defense and a much better team because of their pass rush. I looked this up. When opposing quarterbacks were in a clean pocket, throwing the ball between 2 and 4 seconds.
Yep.
So basically a normal-ish play, they're in a clean pocket. The 49ers, that means there's no pressure. The D-line has not gotten pressure on this play. The 49ers last year had the worst coverage grade in the NFL. You know what they have this season in that same circumstance? Numero uno.
Yeah.
The best. So I'm not saying that the pass rush has nothing to do with it. Obviously, their pass rush has gotten better. They've graded better.
Yeah.
But their coverage has too. And looking at all of the mathematical backing for this, like that coverage, the improvement in coverage matters more. And yes, there is some intertwining, but it goes both freaking ways.
Well, and I'll bring it back here, not to be all Chiefs centric, but last season the Chiefs pass rush was 89.2, literally our highest. And they were a bottom 5 defense in the NFL. And their pass rush this season, and again, Frank Clark has done better, but the Chiefs pass rush this year by our grades is 31st. So they go from first to second to last, and they are, depending on how you look at the Chiefs defense, I think right now they're playing as a top 10 unit, but if you go season long, they're probably a top 20 unit. But the improvement is almost entirely the most valuable player of a defense, which is the coordinator, and improvements. And it's never one coverage player. Sherman played for the Niners last year. It's the collection of players. And that's the thing that you look at. The Chiefs just, we saw them get victimized by Aaron Rodgers on Sunday Night Football, putting linebackers on running backs, and they just don't do that anymore. Yep. And they use Matthew was signed to be the deep safety. That's what he wanted to do. His tweets were, "I'm a center fielder now," and he's not. He's what he's always been good at, which is playing the nickel spot, playing in the box, covering the other team's best inside player, and those improvements I think, transcend and allow for the pass rush to get home. Like Frank Clark has gotten home a lot, but it's later in the rush. Like you saw the play against Houston where he literally had to circle. He went to Kansas City Joe's barbecue, got some ribs, came back and sacked Watson. And then on the last play against Tennessee, that play was 3-4 seconds into the drop back. That's coverage. That's not pass rush. That's coverage helping pass rush. And both teams are a great example of the truth that we printed out a few months ago. Speak your truth. Speak the truth.
That to me kind of sums up where these two teams have come. And now we're sitting here. So most people are going to bet on this game, the Super Bowl, right before the game.
Yeah.
And we've already seen a little bit of movement.
A lot of, not on the side, but the total for sure.
Right. So the side has pretty much stayed at 1.5, and I don't anticipate it moving a lot, right? I can't really see it moving through 0. Yep. If it does, not that big of a deal, right? And there have been some big-ish bets on the Niners money line, but it'll be interesting to see how this goes on, moving forward.
Right.
But we don't show a lot of value on the side. Right now, if you had to bet the side, and I've already bet it, are you still firmly in the Chiefs camp?
No, because I have futures on Kansas City. I'm probably going to be more inclined. Let's put it this way. I don't see an edge on the side. I think if you look at the different ensemble models that we put into Green Line, you look at the player level. It favors San Francisco because I think that they're more spread out equally. Mm-hmm. If you look at quarterback, it's clearly Kansas City.
What?
If you look at coaching, it's pretty much a wash. Mm-hmm. If you look at EPA allowed per play, EPA stuff, it's basically dead on this number. So it just depends upon how you want to spin those, but ultimately my take is if you have a bunch of different models and they're all good, and some point one direction, some point in the other, it's best to lay off.
Right. You're trying too hard if you're making a play in one direction.
Exactly. So, and at this point, we are.
How do you feel about the total?
Our number was right around 53.5, 54. So when it was 51, 51.5, it was clearly an overplay. Yep. And now at 54. I'm not saying bet the under. And granted, last night when I was on the Whale Capper podcast, Drew made a great point. Name me a game state where this is an under game.
It's a wonky one. That's the thing, right? It has to be some sort of outlier game where you've got red zone interceptions.
Yeah.
You have things that you don't see.
Because here's he brought up 35-7 KC. KC just blows out San Francisco. But I brought up, that could the Kansas City could have their way with San Francisco. But Garoppolo is a quarterback who throws enough interceptable passes where I still think the over hits, even if it's a game like this one where Kansas City gets out ahead, the Niners struggle offensively early back because they're a good offense and score enough points for this game to go over, or Jimmy G is going to throw enough interceptable passes where Kansas City's going to be in the red zone, and Kansas City is a good enough offense where they score.
I think the Chiefs win this game. 35-7 ain't happening.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And
right?
so to Drew's point, which I think is a good one, there aren't a ton. Because here's the thing: the Titans had to play the game the other day the way that they played it. They were executing it to perfection. They took 6-7 minutes off the clock on their first drive. They took 7 or 8 minutes off the clock in the second half. The second quarter drive to go up 17-7. And it still didn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the Niners have enough confidence in their abilities, offensively and defensively, where they don't have to do that kind of BS. They can try to play the game straight up, and if you do that, you're going to try to score more points than Kansas City. That's their way to winning.
The Niners absolutely smoked two teams that are better than any team that Kansas City has played in the playoffs. I don't have a high opinion of the Packers, but I don't think the Titans and the Texans are not better than the Packers, and I would say that the Vikings overall are just right there with the Packers. So the Niners are a team that is going to go out and they're going to put up points. Kansas City's defense has improved, but they're not playing in Arrowhead in 10-degree weather, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no way that the Niners are just going to get shut out in this game. The interesting thing would be what happens if there's a big injury. And I think that could be something that could turn, that would be the outlier situation that would potentially, hurt one side a lot, right? Now, obviously, a quarterback injury would be huge, but I'm also thinking like someone in the secondary or someone on the offensive line where all of a sudden they have to change a game plan because now Nick Bosa is running free at the quarterback, and it's like, oh crap, what are we going to do about this? Or Richard Sherman gets hurt, God forbid, and that whole coverage unit is toasted. So those are things that would make it happen. Those are obviously huge outlier situations. So I don't think it's worth talking about betting one of those sides. So let's go to some props.
Okay. And what I like about the props here.
I mean, you like everything about the props here.
Because to me, like, let's say that you like the Kansas City side. Let's say you either have futures, like, let's say you bought into Kansas City futures early in the season, or you bought into them. We had them as the favorite after Baltimore, but even then we had them as the second most favorited team when Baltimore was still in. Let's say that you have a Kansas City future and you're thinking about, okay, how do I find a bet that correlates positively with Kansas City, but can also win if Kansas City doesn't win? And to me, it's Garoppolo's overs. Because if you look at, for example, last week, Tannehill, his over-under, I got it at 17 completions, right? And it was for a very same reason why the Niners, totals aren't as high here, is because they didn't need to throw the football in their 2 playoff wins. Garoppolo is at 19.5 right now. It might open up differently other places. But if the Niners are going to win this football game, they're going to have to throw the football. And he's going to have to complete probably 20 passes or more. If the Chiefs win the football game, he's going to have to complete 20 passes or more to stay in the game.
And that was why it was so interesting watching that Chiefs game from last year, the Niners-Chiefs game, is that to me it was that second half of the game when they started moving the ball and scoring, Garoppolo's throwing short. They were picking up yards after the catch. And that is what they've continued to do. He has a below 7 average depth of targets, the lowest in the NFL, and they average the most yards after the catch. So the completions one is particularly, interesting to me because it's like that's just what they do, right? They're going to scheme guys open. They're going to throw the ball. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. The idea that they're just going to be able to use this same game plan against the team that they were blowing out when they go play one of the best offenses ever created is absolutely farcical, and you're delusional if you think that's going to happen. So I'm with you on the Garoppolo ones. There's a couple others that I really like. So you mentioned Sammy Watkins had this huge game. He ain't having another one in this game. So I both like Demarcus Robinson over 19.5.
Yep.
I love that. And Mecole Hardman over 20-21.
Well, that was my tactic when I was betting the game, the AFC title game, is I had Robinson over, I had Hardman over, and I had Watkins over. Now Hardman only had the one catch, but Robinson got his over on one play. And again, that's the thing. Like one of the things that became immediately apparent to me as a Chiefs fan in the last Niners game was all these players who I think are stiffs with other quarterbacks. So Chris Conley caught a touchdown in that game, right?
He caught that one. Yeah, it was incredible.
And Chris Conley couldn't sniff the end zone with Alex Smith, but after Mahomes does all this kind of stuff, even Chris Conley can get wide open. Yeah. And so I agree with that. Even looking at somebody like Blake Bell, his receiving yardage over is 7.5. That's one pass play, right, to the secondary tight end there.
The other one that I really like that is aligned with what you were talking about is the Emmanuel Sanders. And right now, the place that you found these at, it's at 40.5. I would take 40.5. Pretty happily. I mean, the Kittle at 70.5 I think is a little steep. I think they're going to put Matthew, as you said, I'm in agreement with you, that they really try to lock down Kittle with Matthew. Sanders has had 2 really subpar games from a receiving standpoint, but if you listen to what the 49ers have talked about, they have been praising Sanders' run blocking left and right. And you know what Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is one of the coolest coaches in the NFL because he gets it from a work standpoint, but he also gets it from a getting it standpoint. And he is going in this game he is going to reward the guys who are great players, who have played great. And that can be in the run game, that can be in the pass game, but I would be very surprised if Emmanuel Sanders is not the recipient of many a Garoppolo throw. Tyreek Hill, 74.5 is interesting too. How do you feel about him? Because, I mean, the Niners have just been so good at limiting the deep shots. 74.5, one deep shot does not clear that like it does with Hardman.
Well, my thing is if you're going to bet the primary players for either team, I think you have to get it to you have to basically do the prop maker type of thing. So instead of betting Hill 74.5 minus 110 minus 120 on either side, you bet Hill over 150 at plus 200.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, because to me, like it's a very like barbell type of distribution where like it's either going to be the Houston game where he's not involved at all, or it's going to be the Tennessee game where he's involved a lot. Same thing with Kelsey, right? It's either going to be like it just and you know, Mahomes will find one of those players and make that player a superstar, but the secondary guys, like, you know, that's why I like your approach of going with the sort of the tertiary receivers for Kansas City. The primary ones, I think you have to really sort of be careful. You know,
that's what I'm all about. Emmanuel Sanders, and then the Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman,
and the running backs for the Niners are the same thing.
Yep.
Like if you're gonna try, if you come to me and tell me,
Mostert, you're a clown.
Either take the under on all three of the running backs and then go 2 for 3, or say, okay, I'm going to bet the plus money prop for all three of them. Yeah. One of them, it'll be Tevin Coleman in the Super Bowl, or whomever, if he's healthy, or Matt Breida. I don't know why he's fallen out of favor. He seems like a good running back, but but one of those guys will do something. I've also really like, and I've bet myself, the Damian Williams under rushing yards.
Yes, it's 32.5.
Yeah.
There are a couple other things that I found really interesting. We got to get out of here, but Super Bowl MVP. I was looking at this yesterday. If you're betting, first off, if you're going to bet Mahomes for Super Bowl MVP, please just bet like the Chiefs to win the game.
Right. I think minus 125 where I saw him, and it's like the Chiefs aren't even minus 125. Right. There's only been one player in the history of the Super Bowl who's won an MVP while not winning, and it was a linebacker for Dallas in like the 60s. So,
stop. On the other side of things, though, here's one that I really like, and I believe he's plus 6,000, is Richard Sherman. If the Niners win this game, look, they're the underdog, even though it's slightly.
Yeah.
The fact that they will have won and stopped, I think the narrative will be, look, if they've won, they've overcome the Mahomes thing. And if Richard Sherman makes one big play, I think even if it's not an interception, right? Like if he has this huge knockaway on a deep shot and Garoppolo throws a really bad interception, and you know they're gonna spread out the wealth like amongst the receivers and amongst the running backs. I really like Richard Sherman there, and I kind of like Emmanuel Sanders too.
Yeah, my issue though. So we've seen receivers win MVP. Hines Ward, Julian Edelman, Deion Branch.
Yep.
The issue has always been that the other team's opposing offense was not good enough. Like, in my opinion, if the 49ers win this game on Sunday, Jimmy G will be the MVP. Just because it's not like one wide receiver is not going to do enough to overcome Mahomes.
True.
And so for me, like for the Niners to win the game, and they can, and Jimmy G can do this, it's going to have to be a game like he played against the Saints. And I think the problem is like Kittle was great against the Saints, but Jimmy G threw it to everybody, and everybody was great.
The only point I would make there is that he does, but he throws it short.
Yeah.
So if it's a lot of dink and dunks, I mean, we're smarter now. Like I do think people be attuned to that. I don't disagree with you though, especially because they want to get his face on TV. I would just say this: Richard Sherman's a super long shot, and if he makes one big play that the Kansas City Chiefs are driving to try and win the game, and he makes this huge, knockaway on Tyreek Hill down the field, and that seals it.
Yep.
And he's had a good game all season, all day. I think that's a possibility. You are off to New Orleans. I'm staying here in the frozen tundra of Cincinnati, which means I get to go to the Cincy Y and freeze my butt off. My story from the Cincy Y actually comes from my apartment gym, which has been stuck at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And so now every morning I'm wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants.
Yeah.
And I look like one of those people that's trying to really grind weight. The only nice thing about that has been that there's no one else in the gym because it's legitimately freezing. They should,
the gym goers should really we talked about this a couple weeks ago. That it should just more or less be in the June. June should be when people start to fake the gym again.
I've asked now 3 times for them to turn up the heat, and it still has not happened. So, if anyone is listening that can do something for me, help me out. You have any good stories?
No, other than yesterday, we had an odd number of players. So,
playing basketball.
We played basketball, and me and Steve went against 3 smaller people, and that was a full court 2-on-3, and that was not a good decision because neither me or Steve really we applied defense doesn't matter to the basketball court. Let's just put it that way.
That's fun. Next week we'll be in Miami. We'll be doing some stuff for Miami. We'll have a bunch of live stuff morning and evening, and then some good podcasts, some good guests lined up.
Good guests lined up, yep, for sure.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So enjoy your weekend, rest up, prepare yourself
for some Miami.